Intermediary by Lauer. In my late 20s, I married Matt, also a psychotherapist, who shared much of my earth-based spirituality, particularly a belief in spirit guides, a rare quality in a man, even in the early 70s. The oak tree was his spirit connection to his inner strength, as well as a source of guidance and counsel. He would sit, lean against the base of the oak tree that grew by the creek, close his eyes, and listen to the wisdom of the ages. Life had been particularly busy that September. I noticed he spent less time rejuvenating by the oak. Stress lines furrowed his brow. His sighs became heavier, his sleep restless, his appetite slightly off. One of his long-term therapy clients was an elderly woman who suffered from a rare blood disease. Her courage was inspirational, her humor contagious, even though she knew her condition was fatal and death was imminent. They had grown very close. When she knew she was dying, she had asked him to be with her during the last hour of her life, to see her through the transition. He agreed without hesitation. Toward the end of September, her condition had worsened and the end was in sight. Matt paced by the phone all weekend, glanced at the clock, sat, stood, paced. He shook his head at my offer of tea and toast. There was a haggard look about his eyes. Rob, his best friend and colleague, phoned midday Saturday.
I'm on my way over. We're going for a motorcycle ride up valley. It's a beautiful day to be alive.
Sorry, man, can't do. I'm kind of on death watch here, you know.
Oh, you've been on death's watch for the last 2 years, Matt, and it's taking a discernible toll on you. Ask anyone. You can spare a couple of hours for your health. If you fall apart, you won't have much left to give when the time comes.
Matt knew the advice was sound, and within the hour, the two left for a leisurely motorcycle ride up the mountain. The smell of gasoline lingered in the drive as they crossed the bridge and headed up the winding road. About half an hour later, the call came. She was dying, her brother said, and asking for her therapist. Could he come right over? I explained the situation and promised to send him the very moment he returned. My promise felt inadequate. I knew it could be hours. Irrational as it may be, I knew the guilt we'd all feel if his client died in his absence. I walked out into the front deck and looked at the creek that ran by our house, and at the bay and oak trees, which gave our acreage a forest feeling. I felt myself drawn down the steps toward the base of his special tree. And without really thinking, I wrapped my arms around the trunk and pressed my cheek against the rough bark and called out repeatedly, "Please, come home." I imagined the words penetrating the bark, running up the inside of the trunk, out through the huge limbs, into the smaller branches and twigs, through the veins of the leaves, and finally into the air, like some kind of photosynthetic communication, vibrating the molecules that connect us all. Moments later, the phone rang inside the house.
I just had the oddest feeling I should call. I pulled off at the nearest gas station to use the phone. Is everything all right?
Greatly relieved, I relayed the message about his client. He arrived at her home in time to share her last lucid moments and her beautiful, peaceful passing, just as she'd wished.